Welcome to ENside Politics, our weekly podcast on 6-7 things about San Antonio politics that you need to know. I'm Greg Jefferson, politics editor of the San Antonio Express News. I'm joined today by City Hall reporters Megan Rodriguez.
Howdy.
And Molly Smith, our dream team. So I was out last week, so I'm getting caught up. Let's start with the crosswalk on Main Avenue.
Yes.
There's news. What's the news?
Last week, TxDOT, this is the Texas Department of Transportation, let the city know that they had denied San Antonio's request to be exempt from an order that Governor Abbott issued this fall that said that cities and counties needed to remove basically decorative art and, quote, political ideologies from their streets, or they would be at risk of losing state or federal transportation funding. San Antonio sought an exemption, and the case they made, and other cities have also made this case, was that the rainbow crosswalks, which were installed in 2018 at the intersection of North Main and East Euclid Avenue, there's no evidence to suggest they are making streets dangerous. And that was the whole kind of reason that Abbott was saying we need to get these markings off the street, is we need to promote roadway safety.
And this is kind of following the lead of Sean Duffy, the U.S. Transportation Secretary, who basically wants all arty stuff, particularly pertaining to LGBTQ communities, Black Lives Matter, that kind of thing, off the streets.
Yes. And that's what most of these kind of markings are across the state. There's a lot of rainbow crosswalks celebrating LGBTQ neighborhoods or areas of towns where there's significant LGBTQ history. There's also a number of Black Lives Matter murals across the state. So San Antonio sought this exemption. The state denied it, said that San Antonio would need to come back and do all these things that weren't really feasible. So San Antonio said they would instead remove the crosswalks by January 15th. They will kind of return them to the normal white striping. And the city told us that to kind of commemorate this area was recently designated a Pride
Cultural Heritage District. Yes, which is different than like a historic district. You don't have like these like stipulations with the buildings that you can or can't do things with, but it's to basically, highlight a community.
Yeah, so the city is going to instead paint around this intersection, paint the sidewalks, not the street, with rainbows. And that'll happen. They're hoping to do that before they actually remove the crosswalk. The city kind of kept this under wraps. We just kind of reached out to TxDOT. So the city is known for a couple days, but they hadn't really said anything publicly. We're trying to get a statement from the mayor about her reactions, but no one on council or Mayor Gina Ortiz Jones, they were never optimistic that this exemption would be granted.
And weren't particularly willing to fight it out.
Right. They made it clear that they were not going to sue. And the mayor has always said, antagonizing Greg Abbott over this issue is not worth putting San Antonio at risk, and instead kind of inviting what she sees as potential retribution, where the state would be withholding grant dollars that San Antonio needs.
Yeah.
And I think that like kind of surprised a lot of folks, like the LGBTQ plus advisory board, which is basically a board that is appointed by council members and have a lot of representation in the LGBTQ plus community. They had called for the city to sue. They wanted that if this didn't go through, that was the next step that they wanted taken. They're actually meeting tonight and are getting kind of a briefing on this, and I will likely be kind of getting some of this information in front of them officially more formally tonight, and I guess we'll kind of see what their reaction is.
Has there been any reaction yet at all from the community or no?
I think a lot of folks just found out after our article published, and I think there's kind of disappointment that the city is what they see as kind of just giving in. But I don't think we're going to see, but even if there's public pressure, I do not think the city is going to file a lawsuit, and the city is going to instead paint this sidewalk. And Councilwoman Secor, who represents this neighborhood, she's the District 1 councilwoman, told me earlier today that she's hoping to hold a community meeting and kind of get input on other ways to kind of visually mark pride in this area. And I think that's the route they're going.
So sidewalks.
sidewalks, painting a mural on a building, or other things that folks want to see that are not a crosswalk.
Do we know yet, will this be coming out of city funds or these private sector funds?
Don't know yet, but I think city funds. And the city, I think, in their letter to TxDOT, if I recall, said they were looking kind of for funding to do that.
Okay.
And we don't know how much it'll
crosswalks,
cost.
I mean, wasn't that a mix? It was like city funding and some private sector funding, right?
Yeah. There was a nonprofit that was really paying into it. And
Pride
it was
San
basically,
Antonio.
yes, Pride San Antonio, whatever wouldn't have been the normal cost of a crosswalk, whatever like excess expense, they basically tapped in to their funds for that and fundraised. They also were the ones who were maintaining it. Like the city wasn't going around and keeping this one clean in any kind of like special way, but they would like hire a crew to come out and power wash it regularly so that it kind of kept the colors vibrant.
So the idea behind the Sean Duffy order and the Greg Abbott order was these could be a nuisance, and they create a distraction for drivers, and you could have more accidents. But that didn't actually happen at this intersection.
No, I think evidence locally doesn't show that. And I believe there was a nationwide study that shows that decorative markings actually lead to more kind of pedestrian safety. The city said that in the 3 years prior to these 4 crosswalks installation in 2018, there were 2 pedestrian injuries. They didn't describe what those were, but you would have to assume it was someone getting hit by a car. And then in the 7 years since, there have only been 2. So fewer over a longer time span.
Yeah, not a terrible record.
And they said in their letter to TxDOT that there is another nearby intersection on North and Cypress, and they've said that which doesn't have a decorative crosswalk, and there's been more pedestrian injuries.
And so this in the entire city of San Antonio, it's only this intersection that is subject to the Greg Abbott order?
I believe so. I think one thing to check is I'm not sure if Texas A&M San Antonio has a rainbow marking. They may have at some point, but this is the only one that is on like a city street. Okay. There were other places like Dallas and Austin. Austin has tons of these decorative crosswalks. I want to say they have over a dozen. And they
not
range
all of them
from
politically.
Not all of, but there's one in front of UT Austin's campus on the drag that says, I think it says U Texas or something.
I think it says Texas, yeah.
But yeah, so there's a range.
The Texas gang. It's really dangerous. That's how they mark their territory.
Yes.
I bet it's burnt orange.
It is burnt orange.
Okay, all right. Okay, so another thing I need to get caught up on is the potential shift of city elections from May to November of odd years, which is like, look, I'm at a loss to understand how this is going to mean a higher rate of voter participation, because we're not talking about a presidential or a midterm election cycle. We're talking about an election cycle that usually features Texas constitutional amendments, which have pretty lousy turnout. So let's start with that. We have some academics involved, right? And Mayor Gina Ortiz Jones has a couple of favorite academics that she's called on to back up her argument in favor of this move. What do they say?
Yeah.
Who are they and what do they say?
Absolutely. Yes. There are a couple of professors who I should say, it's not like she just sought out professors to kind of like back her or anything like that. You're in the game. Come on. There's a couple of folks one from California, one from Rice University, who study this for a living. They run kind of projects at their universities and are really looking into voter turnout at large. And this all kind of started and unraveled both for the city of San Antonio and the researchers also when there was some legislation passed over the summer that basically opened the door. Dallas had been pushing for this for a while. They wanted to move their elections, and they were able to pass legislation that allowed them to move it from May to November of odd years. And they are doing it in hopes to save some money and in hopes to increase their really abysmal voter turnout. And so when that went through, these couple of professors kind of started going out and like alerting other cities of like, hey, if you missed this, like this is something that your city could potentially do. And San Antonio was on the list of the cities that they had reached out to. And so that's kind of how she got connected with them and started kind of hearing from them. But the one of them from Rice University, Professor Marshall, she actually was at the city council meeting last week where they were kind of talking a bit about this issue. So she's really who I feel like a lot of reporters have kind of gotten to know over the last few days. She and the other professor are kind of presenting this argument that because we see other cities kind of increase when they make this change. They kind of point to a city called Mesquite, Texas, outside of Dallas, that saw voter turnout double when they made this change. And I will say double goes from like 5% to 10%. So it's still low, but it's doubling.
Thank you for that.
It is increasing. And other communities that they have kind of like surveyed from across the country, like when you just look at like May turnout versus November turnout in odd years, it is higher. And so they just believe that this is the time of year to do it. And there's like a lot of rationale. It's a little squishy when you kind of think about it too hard. It's like, it's things like there's more kind of thought going into voting in elections during the November time cycle, whether it's odd or even years, people just associate voting with November. So that would be a time of year that folks are maybe wanting to come out. It's also when a lot of like voting rights groups are really pushing to get people out to vote and trying to get them registered and going to universities and even like seniors in high school trying to get them signed up. And so it's just when a lot of the kind of momentum is behind it in a way that it's not in May that they believe could kind of help and move it forward. And here's San Antonio, like a local argument that Mayor Jones has been kind of leaning on a lot is that we have the annual fiesta season that happens in the springtime. And so a lot of times people are kind of like focused on that and not on early voting.
That actually does make a lot of sense because of that. I mean, because it seems like
God forbid we move fiesta, but
like every 2 years. Yeah, exactly. You've got early voting overlapping usually, I think, by at least a few days. Usually, I think it's about a week with fiesta, and nobody gives a crap about voting.
Yeah, this last election was on the election day was on the night of the what parade?
Oh, the flambeau.
Yes,
yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, that was by San Antonio standards. That was a pretty high turnout election.
Yes,
but I think more people by probably tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands went to the parade than voted that day. So
I will also say, though, and a lot of people have kind of pointed this out, that here in Bexar County, we have kind of a lower voter turnout in November when you look at it compared to May of the same years in general. I mean, this past year was an anomaly. We had the Spurs arena votes on, and that kind of changed things up a little bit. But for the past decade, at least, we have definitely had like a higher turnout technically in May than in November. So the argument is not that, we just have like this momentum that we need to capitalize on. We have better turnout in November. That's when we need to move to. The argument really is that there's potential for it because of kind of all of these other factors and because of what we're seeing in other cities. Like this is what we think could potentially result in a higher voter turnout. How much higher? It's kind of a question mark. There's kind of this idea of could we also double our turnout because other cities have doubled their turnout. But I mean, all of it is kind of yet to be seen.
Yeah. And so this came up, the mayor brought it up the week of Thanksgiving in a memo to city council. I'm not even sure she was in town at the time. I don't know, maybe. But it seemed awfully late in the game because they've got until December 31st.
Yes, there is a hard deadline with that.
Yeah. So what's the background there? Like why do we only have through the 31st and why is it coming up so late?
Yes. So that is the way the legislation was written. Like I said, this was something that Dallas lawmakers had really been pushing for, and they'd been pushing for it for a while. So for them, it was not short notice or anything like that. They had already had like a charter election before and had been kind of getting like the community residents kind of aware of the topic for the past couple of years. But for us, like it wasn't really something on like San Antonio's radar. There's been some finger pointing, I will say. Mayor Jones has said publicly at her town hall about this that she was frustrated that the city did not highlight this for her, that she kind of stumbled across it when she was like looking for news coverage.
Kind of
yes,
the ball.
Yes, is kind of what she is saying. And the city staff, for its part, City Manager Walsh told me that, well, this is not something that was a priority for the city. That city council council comes up with a list of priorities every legislative cycle and tells us like what they want us to keep an eye on. And in the past, we have kind of kept an eye on things like this, but y'all didn't want that this time around. So we weren't going to kind of alert you to every like movement on a piece of legislation that was very focused on like other legislators and just not something that y'all had said you wanted.
And did anyone in the Bexar County legislative delegation, I mean, they voted for this law. Did they not flag this for any of their, counterparts at the local level?
I think that it's, again, it's kind of this finger pointing of like, where did the ball get dropped exactly? I don't think that it's necessarily like nobody from the city had any clue, but the city council members, the ones who would maybe be pushing for this, they didn't know. They weren't alerted. And so it's like this question of like, how are we supposed to get anything done if even if we had found out this summer? In theory, this would still be a little bit tight, like for the city. Like the council members have all been kind of saying that that's one of their big issues is they don't like how tight this turnaround is. They found out, again, week of Thanksgiving, everyone's getting a memo with some information about like how this could really help. But a lot of them are saying they just hadn't talked to the mayor personally, and everyone's going out for a holiday, and so nobody is really engaged with local politics right now. Like this time of year. And so getting the information out to voters, I think, is what is concerning a lot of these folks is like we are kind of rushing this past without talking to anyone about it.
If you look at the Dallas experience, which is Dallas is the only other city to take advantage of this, it was their idea. They were seeking it and had put 2 years of work into it, it sounds like.
I think through like a charter review commission, Hadn't they?
Yes,
they had amended their charter, and then they needed the legislative fix after the amendment passed.
You had this kind of public process. They talked it over. Presumably, news media covered it. Some people read it. There was an election. People talked about it, and they knew it was
election
coming.
First, legislation second. But yes,
yeah. So, I totally.
It was written like if the legislation passes, basically.
But I mean, some thought went into it. Yes. There was some deliberation in Dallas that we didn't see here. So, where does that put the mayor politically? She supports it. How's it looking for her side right now?
Yeah.
Because we'll have a kind of climactic vote on Thursday.
Yes. Yeah. There are only a handful of council members that are just explicitly supporting this, and a bunch of folks who are just really uncertain that they want to move forward with how little time we have, and also with these question marks about like how it'll affect school districts, for example. Like it'll make it more expensive for them if we abandon them.
Explain that to me. What's the argument in favor of keeping it in May as far as school districts go?
Yes, school districts. Well, for one, the school districts really haven't weighed in super heavily right now. I think a lot of them seem to be waiting to see what happens on the city level. But a lot of the question marks that they've highlighted when there have been like school district leaders who come out to some of these meetings is just like, we don't know if it's going to save us a ton of money to actually move, but we do know that it'll cost us more if you leave us. And so is kind of the thing. Councilwoman Phyllis Viagran, who is one of the folks who is actually backing this initiative, kind of pointed out during the meeting, though, like you're already going to be kind of on your own for a lot of your elections because the city council made 4-year cycles, which is a different 4-year terms recently, the new term. So they're not going to be partnering with the schools as much anymore. So like in theory, it's not as much of a benefit to them as it used to be to have their elections around the same time. But anyway, I should say that's kind of the argument is there's this question mark of like how much it could really benefit them. And there's not a hard deadline for them, though. They don't have until December 31st to decide. They have a lot more time. They need to kind of regroup, I think it seems like, for a lot of them. And there's some Councilwoman Corr is kind of trying to evaluate and connect with a lot of them about what they're thinking, as well as some of the other council members.
I will say that the skeptic in me, let's say we buy the argument that voter turnout would increase slightly by November. I do think among elected school boards, there is an inclination to have lower turnout. If you think about it, school boards are often
information about bonds.
I say this as a former education reporter. School districts are putting up bond elections where they're asking voters to approve large amounts of money from things from stadiums to classroom upgrades. And it really varies on how popular these proposals are, but it behooves them to have fewer voters than a broader swath of the public kind of weighing in because they want these things approved. You also see a lot of school district trustees who run uncontested because there's not a lot of interest in these, or they win on these really narrow margins. And so I think, yes, there are arguments on both sides, but I am a bit skeptical, and I sometimes think watching these districts, I'm not sure how often they want kind of broader public engagement.
Yeah.
Or the elected trustees, I will say. And the elected trustees are the ones who, like they're the council's counterparts, would be voting for that change.
So I agree with just about everything you said, but the stunning degree of cynicism almost disqualifies you from this. Totally joking. So we've got the yeses. We've got the mayor. We've got Edward Munguia. Right?
Yes, Edward Munguia, Phyllis Viagran, and Jayla McKee Rodriguez, District 2.
Who are the hard
Yes. The hard no's are going to be Councilman Mark White, Misty Spears, and Councilwoman Evelise Meza Gonzalez from District 8.
So the north side.
Yes, the north side is against it. And everyone else is kind of, honestly, I will say the people who are in the middle seem to be leaning more for it, and their main hesitations are things about like logistics of having not had enough time to talk with folks, or this fear of what happens to the school districts. We should have communicated with them more. It's not necessarily against the idea itself. Like I feel like that is kind of a rarer view. And I will say in the case of some of these folks, like Misty Spears, for example, she's not really against the idea of moving an election necessarily. She actually pitched the idea when they were talking about this last week that we should move it to even year elections, because even year in November elections, because that's really when you see the most turnout. And so if we want to increase turnout, let's increase turnout. And she is wanting to kind of maybe move forward with like the council advocating for that in another legislative session.
Which is, I mean, that's come up before, right? It didn't run Nuremberg. He was talking about not odd year elections, wasn't it? Like
it was
presidential.
Even,
yes, he has always pushed for even year when he both was a councilman and as a mayor. The reason it kind of always fell flat toward the end, especially, was because there wasn't any legislation that had kind of opened the door. Basically, the state has to give you the permission to move it. And so I will say, though, he's backing this. Like he and several other mayors have said they're backing
like better than
former
nothing?
mayors.
Is that the idea?
The idea is no matter, like is in Mayor Nuremberg's case, when I've talked to him about this, he said, no matter what, even though I was advocating, for even years, I was just advocating for the idea of moving it somewhere where more voter turnout could potentially be. And so that's this. And so he's supportive of anything basically that could potentially improve that voter turnout. Like that was his end goal. So he's supportive of this. And I will say, I guess this idea of moving to even years or waiting until like there's maybe not this December 31st deadline, let's just wait for another legislative session. The reason that like some of the advocates, Mayor Jones especially, have said that this is really not the route to go is because it's kind of a big question mark of if it ever happens again. At that point, we will be the last major city to not have our elections sometime in November, either of an even or an odd year. And so her kind of thought process here is like, we won't have anyone to fight with. It'll just be us. And like, how likely is that really? And the idea of it happening again right away, like maybe like slim chance. And so there's just kind of this fear a little bit of if we don't move now, it may not happen.
How much is the Spurs agreement with the city factoring into this? So you'll recall, I was not too long ago, back late summer, Mayor Jones she didn't want City Council to vote on a non-binding term sheet for public financing for a Spurs arena. The idea being that there just wasn't enough information that constituents had. Like San Antonians didn't know enough about what the benefits would be, what the drawbacks would be, and really bottom line, what was in it for the city. So she tried to get that vote postponed. She failed. But I think it had, I think in the county election, because from that vote, you move directly into an election cycle where Bexar County had on the ballot, hundreds of millions of dollars in public financing for Spurs Arena. And I think her argument that, hey, why, we need to take a closer look at this. I mean, I think that factored into that election. I mean, that proposition passed by only 52% after a campaign that spent more than $7 million to get it passed. So it resonated, right? Who's making hay over the fact that she's now saying, well, we need to act now. Like, let's stop talking about it and just vote.
Yes, this is actually something that comes up quite a bit right now. Since right on the heels of that, Councilman Mark White was the first one I heard this from. And yes, he from day one, when this memo had first gone out, and I talked to him and several other council members who were gracious enough to talk to me right before Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving, and answer a call about this. He was basically saying that exactly. Like, why do we have the mayor trying to rush through something with really no resident input, barely any? Like, people are at that point, nobody had even sent out surveys or confirmed town halls or anything when we were speaking. Like, why are we rushing this? And then having a mayor who had originally said that we should slow down on another deal. And so, and that kind of gets like thrown around at some of these meetings. She actually kind of responded to it at a town hall. And basically said, I thought
this was pretty interesting.
Yes. Yeah. So she neither one of them names each other exactly. Like, you kind of have to ask them more specifically about what they're referring to if you want. But like, she at a town hall about this, which she has monthly town halls, but she turned this into more like, let's talk about the election pitch. And she basically said, spare me the lecture on the fact that we have like moved too quickly. Like, this is something that can, increase our voter turnout. Like, she's blowing it off, basically. She doesn't really buy that. And she also feels like they are getting some input here. Like, she had a town hall. Councilwoman Alderetta Gavito had a town hall. There's been a bunch of surveys going out. And in general, this has been like a palatable idea of moving elections. And so I think the idea is like, this is not an apples to apples comparison.
And it's worth noting, it's like all the council members who were very much, let's vote on this term sheet, even before San Antonio residents had seen the amount that it had been publicly disclosed, the amount the city was going to put up, are the ones who in this case are saying, whoa, let's slow down. We need to do surveys in town halls. I think it's just worth noting that none of those folks in the, how many days was it? 4 days between when the contribution amount went public and it was voted on. I don't remember a single survey or a town hall.
Yeah.
So there, I think the mayor is right, is that this kind of calls to slow down have not been applied across the board.
I mean, let's just be very clear about it. Are they sticking it to the mayor on this one? Are they seeing an opportunity to just go ahead?
Megan?
Nobody is being that direct and overt about it. But I feel like if you know the background of this, it feels a bit like that to some degree. But at the same time, like, I mean, again, nobody is wanting to come out and say that they are fully against moving elections. They are trying to make it about kind of something else. And so it's kind of hard. But yes, I think that is the way most people are reading it, is this is kind of some infighting.
We are seeing, I think, the same split between camps, between Mayor Jones and her small group of reliable allies, and then kind of these Northside council members, which I say would be kind of the block that's kind of spearheaded by Mark White and Marina Alderetta Gavito. And so I think the question is kind of coming into this vote on Thursday, which right now you said it's 4 yes.
Yeah.
Or we believe yes, they need 2 more. Are 2 people going to come over? And if so, who?
Yeah.
And I will also say, because you mentioned Councilwoman Alderetta Gavito there, because she, has been very much paired with Councilman White in a lot of issues. She's not actually directly come out and said exactly what her viewpoint is, although it's pretty darn clear. Like, if at her town hall, she was very quick to mention all the potential drawbacks and concerns for this.
It would be, her position is a difficult one if you believe, as I think a lot of people do, that she will be running for mayor in the next cycle. So in 4 years, like, I would expect her to be a candidate. I think she's been, she's sent some pretty clear signals in that regard.
Yes.
I think it would be hard to run a citywide race and say, you know what, I'm not a huge fan of higher turnout, so let's just keep it in May. So, I mean, I think she might have a rough week in figuring out like how to thread that needle.
And if Gina Ortiz Jones is to win re-election, this is someone who has a national backing, a national donor network, where Marina Alderetta Gavito really just has, I think, is locally known, or maybe in some parts of the state, but does not have that national following that Gina Ortiz Jones does, which is a handicap in municipal elections where there are these kind of really stringent campaign finance caps. And so that really helped Mayor Jones in this election. She was one of the, top fundraisers because she got donations from across the country. Networks across the country were kind of coming in to help her.
Okay.
And we saw the local council members, Manny Pelaez, Melissa Cabello-Haverda, et cetera, could come nowhere near matching that.
Okay. Last question. How significant a vote is this for Mayor Jones? We'll start with you. Given that she's not had the smoothest first 6 months in office.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of outside looking in almost felt like this was something that she was doing to try to get in an easy win at the end. Because, there have been
Is that what she was doing?
I mean, part of me sort of wonders that because it is so rushed and it's not something that I've ever heard her really talk about before this came up. And I think everyone kind of assumes that maybe this would be something that you can get a lot of support for right away with little effort because it's something that's been kicked around City Hall before. So I could see that it was maybe some kind of effort like that, something trying to just get a quick win after she's had kind of been on the losing side of some major issues and even some smaller issues that she's been kind of on the losing end of a 10-1 votes. And so I don't know, obviously. As far as I know, she is definitely somebody who has always advocated for the voter. And so I don't want to just fully brush it off like this is not something that she cares about or something to that effect. I do think that there were potentially some of those motivations. And so, I think it matters to her and to other folks who are kind of reading the headlines of is she going to be able to pull this through? I think the criticism that she's kind of been faced with is that she doesn't talk with a lot of her council colleagues. And so is this going to be a time when she's able to chat with them and bring them on board?
Any sense that that's exactly what she's doing this week?
She's actually been she's at a training or a conference right now. So she's out of town. So maybe she's making calls,
texting maybe
in the evening or texting. So that is probably hindering it, but I don't think there's really tons of evidence that she's, changed course and is really having these one-on-one conversations to get people on her side and sell them on the idea.
Yeah, it's kind of unclear. I will say she's doing a lot to try to bring in kind of voting rights groups and advocates to get on her side and put out a lot of the calls for this as well. There was a press conference last week with a bunch of these groups kind of calling folks to call their council members and ask them to vote. And so there is kind of this other pressure as well that she's leaning on. It's not to say that there's no effort in trying to kind of get this moving. It's just where that effort is being spent is kind of unclear.
I think she's replicating what she did for the Spurs term sheet vote, where she puts pressure on the public to say, or her read is the public is with me. Residents as a whole are with me and side with me.
The last time.
And so is putting these call outs of contact your council member and come to Thursday's meeting. So we're expecting lots of public speakers and is wanting them to kind of make the case and put pressure on the council members. That did not work last time. We'll see what happens this week.
Okay. So what about you? What do you think? How big a deal is this for the mayor? Little? Not at all?
I think it's a big deal. I think this would, if she can get a win on this is going to give her momentum. And this is going to put her in a kind of a stronger position heading into this next year. I think if she loses, people are just going to say she has lost control of this council. And it's going to be a really open question of, can she get that back? And if so, how long is it going to take? Because like you said, it's been 6 months.
Right. Okay. That's a great place to end it. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure we'll probably talk about it next week. We will be back next week. So thank you, and please join us then. Thank you for coming on. See you next week. If you've not signed up for the ENside Politics newsletter, drop to the show notes, click on the thing, and get signed up. And see you then.